Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Educating for the Future. I'm your host, Janis. Today, we are reviewing a book called Mindful Teacher, Mindful School, Improving Wellbeing in Teaching and Learning by Kevin Hawkin, which might just change the way you look at the classroom. If you are an educator wondering if mindfulness is actually possible to adopt it in your school, this episode is for you. The core theme of this book isn't just about learning how to meditate. It's a plea to reintegrate the heart and body back into a system that has become totally obsessed with the head. Hawkins kicks things off with a question: what do we really want for our children? Usually, we say things like happiness, fulfillment, or compassion. Very rarely does a teacher look you in the eye and say, I want my students to be absolute machines at standardized testing in exchange for their emotional intelligence. Yet that is exactly what our system often produces. We've become so obsessed with the cognitive development that the holistic development of children is often ignored. So, how do we fix this? Hawkins argues that it has to start with the teachers. He uses the oxygen mask principle. You know the drill on airplanes. You have to secure your own mask before helping others. Hawkins argues that you simply cannot have a mindful school without mindful teachers. If a teacher is depleted or stressed, they physically cannot model emotional regulation for a child. And let's be honest, if a teacher is about to snap, the students know it. They can sense it in the tone of voice, the body language, or even the gossip from a previous class who already experienced the fury. Therefore, how we teach becomes just as important as what we teach. Mindfulness improves teachers' well-being, which directly impacts teaching quality. Other than teaching mindfully, teaching mindfulness can also improve students' holistic development. By engaging with the emotional and relational sides of learning, what Hawkins called the forgotten taxonomies, students develop social-emotional maturity. They learn that failing a test isn't the end of the world, and having a bad day doesn't mean you have to throw a chair. This helps students navigate the emotional atmosphere of the classroom, which often fluctuates between quiet study time and, Lord of the Flies. Hawkins warns that this can't be a one-off workshop. Mindfulness needs to be a holistic framework woven into the school culture. By combining teacher presence with social-emotional learning, schools can create a new metric for success, one that values well-being right alongside academic achievement, rather than seeing them as enemies competing for time. Perhaps the most important message from Hawkins is that mindfulness must be integrated into school settings. He defines mindfulness as the awareness that arises when we pay attention, on purpose, with curiosity and kindness. And here's the kicker. Mindfulness might actually boost academic performance too. We all know our attention spans are shrinking, but the numbers are terrifying. A 2013 Microsoft survey of 2,000 people found that the average attention span dropped from 12 seconds in the year of 2000 to just 8 seconds in 2013. To put that in perspective, a goldfish has an attention span of 9 seconds. We're officially losing to the fish. The blame largely falls on digital lifestyles, media consumption, social media, and multi-screening. We're constantly juggling multiple sources of information, but that isn't how children learn. They learn by paying attention to new concepts, not by trying to cope with reading 3 textbooks at once. This is where mindfulness comes in. It helps abandon that frantic multitasking and uses the plasticity of children's brain to repair their attention span. We've seen this work in the real world. At Stanley Grove Primary School in Manchester, they implemented the mindfulness courses for students aged 7 to 11. Teachers reported that students had much better focus, better behavior, and were able to leave their playground squabbles at the door. This aligns with research too. A study by Jensen and their colleagues explored the relationship between mindfulness and attention in university students. They found that a mindfulness-based stress reduction course, MBSR, resulted in significantly better attention than a standard stress reduction course. Participants improved in the dual attention to response task, which measure how fast you can switch tasks. This is crucial for students who need to quickly switch focus from recess back to algebra. But students today face a challenge that didn't even exist when Hawkins wrote this book in 2017, short-form videos. We're talking TikTok, YouTube Shorts, and Instagram Reels. Hawkins never mentions them, but the impact is undeniable. Research by Halati Sule and Sadiku found that excessive screen time involving fast-paced content leads to diminished attention control and cognitive overload among university students. Unfortunately, this is only going to get more intense for children who have less self-constraint than adults. The success of these videos relies on catching the eye, which fuels their popularity and can potentially lead to internet addiction. Fortunately, research by Seward and their colleagues found that mindfulness is negatively related to the intensity of internet addiction. In other words, mindfulness could be the antidote. Now you might be thinking, great, let's do this. But we can't just throw mindfulness into an education system and tell teachers to figure it out. Take secondary 4 to 6 as an example. Students are preparing for the DSE exams. The schedule is so packed that students often need to attend supplementary classes during holidays. Ironically, this is the exact time they are most stressed and most in need of mindfulness, because the DSE determines their future. But the schedules are packed to ensure maximum grinding for the test. Worst of all, the two most common university admission systems, JUPAS and non-JUPAS, are based almost entirely on cognitive ability. The root cause of resistance to mindfulness isn't just the timetable, it's the admission system. Hawkins argues that for mindfulness to work, social-emotional learning needs to gain status alongside cognitive development. If universities shifted their focus to whole human development, schools will follow suit. However, mindfulness isn't the only path. An article by Jones and their colleagues reviewed 33 programs for social-emotional learning. Many of them, like the 4-hour program, integrate social skills directly into language, art, and literature. In face of the heavy emphasis of cognitive ability in the educational system nowadays, despite the slow change of emphasis towards aspects other than cognitive development, exchanging cognitive development for social-emotional development may not be entirely beneficial to children, in which mindfulness provides less cognitive learning to students, explaining the resistance it faced in the integration to the education system. For it to gain recognition, a shift of focus to social-emotional learning may need to become exactly as important as cognitive learning. However, seeing the current transformation of the education system in Hong Kong, the integration of mindfulness may not be happening soon. We have to remember that children are not fully emotionally developed yet. I've seen students resort to violence because they are forced to complete an assignment, or break down crying because they can't solve a math problem, which we may have all experienced at some point. But these are not beneficial, nor were they the healthiest reaction in face of stress. They can originate from imperfect parenting, unhealthy growing environment, or even inborn temperament. Individual differences mean there is no single teaching style that fits everyone. You might be doubtful that mindfulness can work for every child, but Hawkins gives us a comforting insight. He says mindfulness is not the solution to all life problems, but by seeking to validate the inner experience of students and teachers, we start asking deep, transformative questions about how we organize schooling and how we nourish our teachers. It is hoped that mindfulness can help us see our students and, most importantly, ourselves clearly. That clarity is the basis for any real transformation in the education system. I hope you enjoyed this first episode of Educating for the Future, and I will see you next time.